Well, Gary Fahey was once the country's highest profile police officer who ran former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd's protection and security team. But his downfall came when a gambling addiction cost him his job. Gary is now a best-selling author and speaker and determined to help others avoid the same spiral of personal and professional destruction. He joins me now live. Gary, good to speak with you. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about your story?
Yeah, hi Danica, thanks for having me on. Look, I suppose there's a highlights and a lowlights tour of my life. I'm a Western Sydney boy. I grew up there in a pretty normal upbringing, but I spent 18 years with the Australian Federal Police, was fortunate enough to take on roles like running the Prime Minister's protection team, managing the Office of Commissioner and a lot of operations nationally and internationally. But then for the last 10 years of that career, I was silently battling, I suppose, a major depressive disorder and also a gambling addiction, which set me on a very downhill spiral, cost me $2 million, ultimately my career and my reputation, and also had me seriously considering the value of my own life. It wasn't a good time, but thankfully I've come through the other side and in a position where I might be able to help some others who are feeling the same thing.
And what was it that made you realise that you need help?
Most likely, I realised it a lot sooner than I actually sought help, but ultimately I made a lot of mistakes with my work credit card. I was in a very deep hole financially, mentally, emotionally, and I made some very silly mistakes with the work credit card. That was brought up in a meeting with the Deputy Commissioner, and subsequently I lost my career on the back of that, and it was a real rock bottom moment and I suppose an opportunity for me to start turning my life around, or at least start to explore what I needed to do that.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned before, you're now trying to help others. What made you want to coach men to avoid a similar downfall?
Well, to be honest, having a look back, I really had to make sure that my pain meant something, that I went through this for a reason, that the people that I hurt, the struggle that I went through actually comes out and means something on the other end. And, you know, it was one thing to go through it for myself and to find that way out. But I genuinely believe that I went through it for a reason, and that reason was to make sure that I can help as many people struggling with the same points of failure as I did, and hopefully not to get as low as I did as well.
Do you think that it's difficult for men in that position or in general to ask for help, to reach out when needed?
Yeah, it's certainly difficult for everybody, but it's in particular difficult for men, especially men in alpha-dominated environments, men in high-performance environments, where they're trained to solve problems, they're trained to not be the problem. They've been conditioned to be on top of their game all of the time. And there's a subconscious belief that if I speak up and start to talk about some of my problems, that's a chink in the armour, and that chink is potentially going to cost me my career, that chink is potentially going to cost me relationships and opportunities to progress. And I think that makes it even more difficult for a man to recognise himself that he has a problem, let alone speak to somebody else about it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that it's this conditioning to feel or behave in a certain way. How do you change that pattern?
Well, I think there's a number of ways that we can do that, or number of angles that we have to come from. And what I work predominantly with is the individual starting to recognise some of the symptoms, starting to recognise some of the internal feelings, and actually starting to make change themselves, start to create a conscious identity of who they are and where they're going in life. The other side of it is to get some more voices out there that resonate with these types of men. It's not a traditional space for men, alpha men or successful men to be speaking in. And therefore, when you are going through it, you don't see anybody that looks like you. You don't hear anybody that speaks like you. And that further enforces the fact that you probably should keep your head down and not speak up about it. So more voices that resonate with that demographic is certainly going to be of benefit.
It's so important to get that conversation going, to reshape the conversation, which is exactly what you're doing. Have you got a message for people out there?
Yeah, certainly. Look, the first message that I'd like to give, especially men, is, we talk about doing tough things. And in reality, one of the toughest things to do is to speak up. And so what I would like to ask men to do is do the tough thing. It's not about beating your chest and pretending you're stronger or braver than anybody else. If you really do want to do the tough thing, that is recognise some of the symptoms, recognise some of the internal misgivings. When you don't feel right, start to talk to yourself about it and start to talk to others. Doing the tough thing can sometimes save your life, save a marriage, or potentially take you to where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really important messaging there. Gary Fahey, great to speak with you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I appreciate your time.